You know, it was one of our first dates, probably our second date, I think. We were out at a fancy restaurant, one of those places where you can draw on the tablecloth. And Zach started drawing his dream place with like a round house, a farm, and we just started sharing our dreams kind of from that point forward. And now we live on a farm and we have a yurt for our roundhouse, and we're building a dream together and kind of realizing old visions that we've had, but also the visions that have sort of arisen since we moved here and grown out of our relationship with each other. Yeah, so we're Zach and Danielle. Zach Seligman, Danielle Latuga.
We live outside of St. Ignatius, Montana. And yeah, we have this farm property and a bunch of animals, some dogs, a kid.
A blacksmith shop.
Blacksmith shop. I don't think that you realize, though, that it's happening until it happens. Right? Like I remember those early conversations and having dreams, and even before we met, like wanting to sort of live a life like this. But, you know, it just seems so crazy to actually get there. Like, I'm so used to it now, but it seems crazy, you know? You're just like, okay, we're just gonna move up there, let's get all our stuff and buy this place. And like, you can't foresee all the things that are gonna shake out once you make that transition after like living in small places in a much more urban, suburban lifestyle in Missoula.
Well, and making a full departure from sort of expectations that of a way of life that were kind of laid out for us, you know, through our upbringing and through living in a different setting.
And school and stuff.
You know, and yeah, and like thinking, oh, you're going to follow this linear path through school and take this career path that's laid out through your academic career, which I don't think ever suited either of us.
I hope you turn out. You know, I had a super romantic view as to what this was going to be when we came here, and it just is like, for a while there's like one stressor after the other, and we're like, got the balancing the financial issues with like, this is breaking and that's breaking, we got to fix this. Oh, we kind of want to get here with our business or whatever, so that means we got to do this, this, and that. And all of a sudden, we're just like doing all this stuff constantly that we've never done before, and trying to like have balance in our lives and raise our kiddo and just, I don't know, be good. And it's just like, it's just intense. And so, I don't know. And then on top of that, like making a transition from, I don't know, like really pushing hard on the farming to then suddenly being like, all right, well, I'm gonna like really try like this blacksmithing business. Like I had been just blacksmithing and doing some commissions and selling this and that here and there, but then, you know, we decided to really turn it on and like turn it into a business. Yeah, when we first showed up here, there's just so much stuff sitting around, and it's like, oh, I can use that. I can make some out of that. Actually, there's a whole bunch of car frames on the other side of the creek that are slated to get cut up here in the next couple of years. So that'll be fun to reuse all that stuff. I make most of my own tools, hammers, tongs, punches, and chisels. just out of a variety of things. This is a punch that's made out of an old SDS drill bit. You know, so when you find tool steel that you can reuse, it's pretty slick. But most of the metal I work is mild steel that I either purchase or is repurposed from other things. You know, old car frames or railroad spikes, or just actually there's a bunch of metal around the farm here that I was able to turn into stuff over time. Yeah, I had started like a few years before we moved out here. And even when we moved here, I wasn't quite sure that I was gonna like make it into a business. Actually what happened is that we were doing some farmers markets locally, and I was selling some real basic stuff, but I ran into a guy who had also been a blacksmith, and he had all this equipment. You know, I had like real basic stuff, but this treadle hammer, the power hammer, both grinders, this big anvil, just some really important tools. Like, he just has essentially given them to me. And it really changed my ability to make things and operate in here. Yeah, just all of a sudden, people were very generous with things, and we're like, here's some more equipment. And then I got into an art show in Missoula, and at this gallery, and that really, it made me produce a lot of things I normally wouldn't have made in a short amount of time. So it kind of kicked things up for me, and then it's evolved into a pretty much full-time job. Yeah, I guess I knew my grandma pretty well, and she was like kind of ahead of her time in the sense that she was like all into computers and stuff when I was even just a little kid. They lived outside of San Diego in like Carlsbad. So we would fly out there a lot, and she wrote like 90 books about all sorts of different stuff. She was an art appreciator and artist appreciator, and her and my grandpa Mel, they loved to travel. They traveled all over the world. I think a lot, for her books, to get information and meet artists and just learn about things going on in different parts of the world. Anyway, there's several books that are just sort of an ode to the metal arts, and it's probably some of the greatest metal artists in the world. Yeah, I only started doing metal work as an adult. I think for me it's just finding connection with the things that I make and using my hands and my brain, and not just sitting at a computer all day. That drives me nuts. I just kind of hit a point where I was thinking, what could I do that's just more hands-on, that I could just take up a hobby and learn something. And so I gave it a try. I took a class out in Washington a bunch of years ago, and just super into it. I was so tired after like a day of hammering, and it was awesome. We make all these belt buckles, and a lot of people are just really psyched about their belt buckles, Or I made this heron sculpture thing for some friends, and they just love it, And I end up loving it too, and that's really awesome. Like at this demo the other day at Paws Up, I made a dragonfly for this little kid, and for some reason, this one family and this little kid, like they I guess Paws Up advertises like my arriving ahead of time, but these people like showed up to see me, which is a strange thing for me. But yeah, they were there, and then the kids were just so psyched, and the kids were really cool. And I think his name was Connor, but yeah, he stuck around for this dragonfly. And once he got it, he saw the whole thing get made, and it was for him. And I'd never seen him just like, this kid is so excited. I was like, that was worth it. I'd make 100 dragonflies for you, little man. Yeah, so I think that the blacksmithing business has taken off in the realm of belt buckles. And so we have some really awesome people that we work with that we sell wholesale to throughout the country. And so I think the belt buckles are sort of bread and butter. And I do enjoy making those. I think it's interesting, pretty much every time I'm making them, I'm like, you're at the beginning stages, you're cutting out metal and you're getting them ready and you're doing this and that, and you're like, God, these look terrible. I can't believe that this is what I'm working on, But once you go through all the steps, once they get cut out and forged, and then, they got some welding, and then once they get really like cleaned up and finished, it turns into a really cool thing. It's like, you just take something non-assuming and it turns into something really amazing. It's interesting, like, before I heat it up, it looks kind of crummy, and then I'm like, okay, so then I'm gonna pull these rings out, and I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna first forge them over there, but then I'll like I'm really trending towards making more time for artwork, just original artwork, sculpture, wall hangings, putting techniques together to really make something unique, one of a kind. I love to work more on people's homes, like big dividers, wall hangings, staircases, rails. The bigger sort of blacksmithy, architectural ironwork stuff would be really cool to make more of that stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I think I've always been like sort of a technical, science-y sort of guy, and identify with these things that you do. And so yeah, I guess school-wise, like college, I like had a biology degree and thought I was going to go to medical school, and then I always was into like mountain stuff. So after college, I moved to southern Colorado and worked as a mountain guide for a couple of years. So I was going to go to medical school after that, and was like working on applications. And then I was like, I was working at a hospital at one point. I was like, I don't really want to be stuck in a hospital all the time. So then I was like, I want to like help the environment or something. So I came up to Montana and got a grad degree in geography and worked on some glacier work. But yeah, then I thought I wanted to get a PhD in like snow science. So I started working on that. I found that was miserable. So I got like these 2 degrees, which I really appreciate. It's like now I feel like I don't really use that stuff, but I guess you do. It's just part of your life. So, but yeah, we moved up to Anchorage after that, and I was way into the field work. I loved being out in the mountains and in the bush and working with instrumentation. So I worked with an instrumentation company up in Alaska. Then I started my own sort of like instrumentation installation business, and we moved back here to Montana. And I did that for a bit, and then we were about to have Gideon, and I was like, I feel like I'm going to be home more, and I need something to do at home, so I can be around my kiddo and not be out just running or skiing or whatever it is. So yeah, that's when I started blacksmithing. It just sucks that anyone could feel just so stuck with the short amount of time that we have here. My perception of the society that I interact with, it seems to me that it's got to be a artifact of prior generations. You like start doing something, you're sort of expected to keep doing that, right? Like if I had stuck with geoscience stuff, like, oh, you went to school for geosciences, well, you got to keep doing that until you're dead. It's like, poof, that kind of sucks to think about it that way. So yeah, I guess a big one that's always stuck with me is just like, you are who you want to be. You never are who you are, because like you see like yourself trying something new, and you're only going to become that future you by sort of like bridging the gap between now and the future constantly. You are who you are. If you are who you are, then you're just static. But it's just like, if you get a glimpse of yourself being something else, like a blacksmith or a carpenter or a daredevil or a firefighter or something, like all of a sudden you are that thing. Even if you're just a fraction of that thing, like you're already trending towards becoming that. And it's just a little bit by little. And next thing you know, you've done it enough, or you've approached it enough that you are that thing. But at the same time, then there's iterations of that thing, and then you already might be transitioning. So the path is obviously circuitous to wherever you're headed. I mean, I think if you look at your life like that, then I don't think you'll ever be bored. play.
The pasture, like we've chosen at this point to not manage the pasture with livestock, and that's in part to manage it more for habitat and for people to like connect with this place and enjoy the pasture. And I mean, sitting out here at the yurt and just like being just here is kind of amazing.
You alright, good? Well, so a good friend of ours in Missoula had been living in this yurt up in the Rattlesnake, and his life changed, and I think he was just sitting up there getting sort of taken over by squirrels and bears and mountain lions. So I think over a few years we talked about like buying it or trading or whatever, obtaining it, and at one point it was just like, you can have the yurt, just take it down and clean up the area, you know. So I think it took me like a week's worth of time to like go up there and disassemble it and clear all the stuff out. And there was a lot of other lumber and just other materials up there that we've been trying to repurpose around here on the farm. Like some of it's in the blacksmithing shop, and we used it to side the greenhouse, and
Some of it's
yeah, a lot of it's just been reused to rebuild the kitchen space and the bathroom and the deck and the platform and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're super fortunate to have essentially inherited the yurt, and we're the third owners. I think it was made in 1994, and we had to replace like the sidewall fabric, and then the dome was the main thing. So it's pretty cool, you know. It's a temporary structure, but that it's been around for decades in multiple environments, and
Yeah.
you know, it's pretty cool. So it's got some history.
Yeah, but most people would have a group of people helping them construct the yurt, right, and put it up. But it just turned out, because we kind of do things on the
We
fly
husband and wifed it.
Yeah, Zach likes to say we husband and wife the shit out of that.
Sure did.
You know, part of our bigger vision for the farm has always been having it be a place of respite and learning for people, and of course refuge for animals and everybody, really. And so one aspect of that we've thought about, and that I think we will eventually be able to do, is to host retreats and yoga classes and community events here. Like that would be the dream realized for this in particular, you know. And it's a great guest space right now, and it's helping us kind of, you know, support the farm. But in like ultimately, that's what we want really for this space, is for it to just foster community and learning and just
Refuge.
respite. Yeah, so when we moved here, this area, which looked very different, was the original garden. So there were garden beds down here, and there was a very ramshackle fence. And the first year we were here, we gardened down here. And then it kind of fell by the wayside because we put in those other gardens, and it was just kind of hard to keep track of. But I've always liked this space. And then we had a friend who lived across the valley. Her family still lives there. And she was young, and she was diagnosed with cancer. And not too long after she was diagnosed, we were sitting down by the creek and just talking about stuff. And she kind of motioned over this way, and she's like, "Is that going to be your medicine garden?" And I was like, "Well, yeah." Like, I had been planning to kind of turn it into that. And she just, you know, just thought about that. So then, sadly, she passed away. And I just always, like, have wanted to make this a space for her, and a space that, you know, just feels like home and feels peaceful and healing. And so finally this spring we had the space and the resources to like redo the fence, and we got this greenhouse from our neighbors, and I've coveted that greenhouse since we met them. But yeah, so we just redid it this year and got irrigation in and stuff. So this is the first rendition of the new version. And there are some plants in here that we planted with my friend's family shortly after she died. And yeah, so it just feels like a really special place for us. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think even when being in Alaska, like it was so miserable, just with the job and the people, and like, it just was not a good fit for us. I mean, sometimes I'm like, and if anyone in Alaska is watching this, this is not a generalization. I mean, we really met some great folks there. It's more like the overall circumstance for us was not good, and it's like, I might still be there, sort of like not very happy. Miserable is a strong word, but not very happy and doing stuff I didn't want to do if not for Danielle. I think having a good partnership and having a good partner is someone you can really just bounce everything off of. And just being able to talk out loud and have someone listen to you whenever you need it is critical.
I think sometimes, yeah, you have to get into something that really dissatisfies you or is really uncomfortable to recognize what it is that you do want. We talk a lot about things. Like we sit down in the mornings often and like strategize things and talk about what's going on, and
That's true.
And talk about priorities. Like we're in constant contact with each other that way, which is also interesting because we often say that we're like two ships passing because we're like divide and conquer, let's get this all done. And that's, so there's like, there's a very delicate balance to achieve in there, right? Like how do you get everything done that needs to be addressed? Like how do you really like address the priorities and also prioritize the foundation, which is your relationship with each other? You can only do so much with all the vision that you have. Like some of it has to play out and become viable to support your family. So we're not only married and parenting, we're running a business together. Like there has to be that practical balance in that as well, because and we talk about this a lot because I'm somebody who like loves to do lots of different things and has lots of interests, and I'm constantly wanting to learn something new and master something else. And
our basement's full of half-finished projects.
But some of them are yours too.
No.
No. So before we harvest, I always scrub the buckets with vinegar. Buckets get dirty. It can like propagate bacteria and stuff that then kills your flowers faster. So I am gonna cut some bunny tail grass this morning, which is a grass that we actually dry, and I planted it this year because we have a wedding book next year. So I'm Danielle Latuga, and I farm flowers with Zach and Gideon, and I grew up gardening, and I always loved flowers. And I've always loved pollinators, butterflies and bees. And I mean, literally when I was a kid, I just would run through fields of wildflowers chasing butterflies. That was me. And also like bringing, my mom would cut peonies or lilacs, and I would bring them to our elderly neighbor Maxine, or I'd bring them to my school teachers. And I always loved just carrying the flowers and burying my nose in them because they smelled so good. So, that was really just part of my growing up and my development as an individual. So it's really dreamy for me to be doing this, for sure. But yeah, and a big reason for doing it specifically is because of my love for pollinators and the earth, and wanting to do something that contributes to the health of our planet and for pollinator habitat. So the vision is really built around that. And, that's, like, I love the flowers. I love cutting them. I love giving them to people and having people enjoy them and, relish in their beauty and maybe learn about them and learn about the pollinators. But at the end of the day, like, fundamentally, when I'm walking through the flowers, what I'm looking for are like happy pollinators doing their thing. And that's why. So zinnias they're one of my favorites. So both my grandfathers were really into gardening, and my mom's dad, like, zinnias were his favorite flower. So I've always planted them kind of for my grandpa. And now there's all these amazing varieties that they grow for, that they bred. And zinnias are fun, like, so they're harvesting them. A lot of people don't know. They're always like, my zinnias don't last or they droop, because they probably are harvesting them too early. So see how that guy's like a little wiggly and floppy? That's like way too early. But see how that one is like much firmer? That's when like when their neck is stiff, basically. That's when you know that they're ready. It's a specialty cut flower farm. We started out kind of doing everything. We started out by doing farmers markets and CSA and a little bit of wholesale. And then we kind of moved in the direction of really focusing on wholesale, because we felt like it would be a good way to make a good impact on the domestic flower market. Because most people don't know that like 80% of the flowers in the US are imported. And with that comes a lot of like environmental impact, and also, impact to the flowers. Like, if they're crossing the borders, they've got to be, one, harvested really early in their life cycle, but also typically sprayed with all kinds of chemicals. And so we love contributing to the local flower market and not using chemicals or minimizing use of chemicals, or using natural chemicals as opposed to just really harsh ones. But yeah, so we moved into wholesale, hoping that would be kind of the bread and butter with the flower farm, and then last year fully realized that it just wasn't sustainable for us and for our operation, because we're so small and we're so new to the process. This is our 5th summer farming cut flowers. And I think, especially when you're trying to do things in a very mindful and sustainable way at a larger scale. I mean, our farm is not huge scale, but for 2 people, essentially, it's a lot. And you start to understand why people use things like plastic weed cloth to control weeds, or all the things that make farming more efficient are necessary at larger scales. But what happens is that you end up compromising the ecosystem, or if you're farming animals, you end up compromising the quality of the life of the animal. And like doing this has given us a lot of good perspective on that, and we understand like how we as a society have gotten to this point where what we're doing is not sustainable. So like for us, we're trying to always walk that line of like, how do we do this most efficiently without compromising the health and well-being of all who we're working with? And that's hard. And it's a constant, like, it's a constant question. Everything you do, you have to consider that. And like, we try to minimize plastic as much as we can. And that's like virtually impossible. We can't say, at this point, we can't say we're no plastic, right? It would be lovely at some point to be able to say that. But you know, I'm sitting here, we've got this flower netting, total plastic. And I'm like, honestly, I can't stand this stuff, right? But when we started farming, this was what was available. We purchased some once and we just reuse it. And you can see that it's like blown out in places. And if we have to like come up with some other, like once this stuff is no longer usable, it sucks because we have to throw it out. But then like, what is our alternative? Well, hopefully there's been something better developed. And I think there has been actually since we purchased this thing. So, and then on a day-to-day level, you know, because of the way that we're farming, where we're trying to minimize tilling, minimize mechanization, minimize plastic, maximize soil building. It's like weed management is crazy. Soil building is like fundamentally what we need to be doing, and we're still learning that process, but we're making progress every year. Pest management, you know, like we were picking beetles last night. Like I don't want to spray anything, right? And sometimes that means that I totally lose a crop. Sometimes that means that I'm walking around picking up and I don't, you know, as an individual, I don't like to kill anything. Like it's just really hard for me to do that. And I actually think a lot about when I was a little girl, one of my jobs was to go out in the garden and sprinkle salt on slugs that were eating our lettuce and collect Japanese beetles and put them in a can of gasoline, you know? And I hated that. Like it was like soul destroying for me. And it's still, you know, I mean, but again, like you can see why we've come to these places where we're spraying pesticides and using, you know, different chemicals and that kind of thing, because like a farmer can't afford to lose their entire crop to something. Yarrow, so I love yarrow, but it's what they call a dirty plant. It makes the water kind of dirty when it's in it, so I usually try to store it with other dirty plants. So I think the hardest part is the intellectual and emotional output and processing of problem solving, trying to figure out how to do it in the most sustainable way possible that allows you to produce and like make some sort of a living at your crop, and also not, you know, create a barren wasteland in your farm, you know. And so and physically, you know, I'll be 50 in December. We started farming 5 years ago. And Zach and I often laugh about that because we're like, yeah, we should have done this like in our 20s, right? When we had more stamina. But we didn't meet, you know, we didn't meet until later in life, and we both were holding the dream until we found the person that we could share that dream with, which is pretty awesome.
Invoice them monthly or something?
No, I'm going to invoice them for a set number of bouquets. So yeah, I think those are like the daily challenges. And then of course, like finding a market for your product and determining what that product is. You know, that's like, we allowed ourselves in these early years to kind of just throw everything at the wall and see what stuck, you know. And now it's becoming clearer to us what works for us as a couple and a partnership and a very small family farm, which is different than other small local family farms. You know, for me, the impact is, you know, in my mind, if you're nurturing the planet, if you're nurturing nature, you're nurturing everyone, you know. You're nurturing not just every being that comes in contact with what you're growing and taking care of, but also those who are receiving that and those who are surrounding it. And so I feel like I can, you know, by selling the flowers, I can sort of spread that love and that wisdom, really, you know, and hopefully it helps anybody who comes in contact with it have a better life, have a healthier life and balance. What? Do you want to drink it out here? Yeah. Okay. Oh, we forgot. I keep forgetting to tell those guys that Brixie left his
Like, there's some days where like all these people are coming over and like the kids are coming over getting dropped off, the parents are doing this, other people are like dropping something off or asking us for help like with glue sticks or whatever. And it's just like all of a sudden there's all this like traffic, and it's kind of cool because we're kind of in the middle of nowhere and there's this like community thing going on because it is a really beautiful, special spot. Well, I think some more of that would be cool, and then I think that Gideon is a part of that and sees all that. You know, we're not just like trying to self-isolate away from the world. We're like a part of something around here, which is super fun. So make a living at things here, whether it's growing flowers or doing things with metal, or having experiences here. And so it's like we might be doing upkeep on the property, or I'm actually creating something. And I think Gideon can see the efforts that go into it and the products that come out of it. That's all working with your hands and solving problems. And I don't know, I think it's pretty cool. And I've been digging we're still figuring out the homeschool thing a bit, but I think a big thing with that and this lifestyle is just like, you know, Danielle just mentioned like sitting at the table in the mornings. Oftentimes Gideon's hanging out nearby and listening to us talk and is patient with us. And
my amazing wife bought me this kick-ass red truck for my 40th birthday.
Aww.
You're amazing wife.
The only time ever.
You know, not just shuttled off somewhere else to like get out of our hair. He's not going to school. He's like with us most of the time. And I just think that that's so cool. And like, how long has our society actually been compartmentalizing our kids in these institutions? Like, a lot shorter than humans have been raising kids. It's just like I have this opportunity to try and do things differently. And like, yeah, I think it's working out and that's really great. But I think the bigger thing is just showing other people, your kids and whoever else, that you should go for it, you know? Like, don't sit there and do what other people tell you to do or what you think. You know, sometimes you just make it up. You know, you make up what you think other people think you should be doing. It's like, it's so crazy what goes on in our heads, right? So it's like, take a pause and be like, wait a second, what would really be fun? What do I really want to do? And like, get it figured out and do it. You know, whether it's something small, like fixing a pump, or something big, like I'm gonna try this business venture, or I'm gonna go and do some big mountain traverse or whatever, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I think being parents who are just trying to go for it, trying to make it happen, like he may not understand it all right now, and that's okay, but I think as he gets into his teenage years, like, I just hope he looks back, he's like, man, my parents are nuts. Like, that's crazy that they did that, and look at all the shit that they built out here or whatever. And it's just like, man, that's pretty cool.